What's up guys, my name is Josh and today we're going to be talking about the future of audiophile headphones. If you look at other forms of technology, phones, laptops, they all seem to be getting more personalized, more customized, and more importantly, smaller. To a certain point at least. They're able to cram more and more technology into something this size and into something this size every single year. And if you look over to something like the Odyssey iSign 10s, which take planar magnetic technology, shrink it and kind of put it in a relatively small in-ear design where it actually kind of fits inside your ear like this. Now, this is an interesting product because I think it offers a lot of opportunity for growth and kind of inspires some thoughts in my head, and I want to talk about those thoughts today. So this video represents a video that was going to be but no longer is, which is going to be a comparison between a $350 in-ear planar headphone versus a $350 over-ear planar headphone. And the headphone that I was going to primarily compare against was going to be the Sundara, because while they're on sale like 90% of the time, they're basically $350. I was also going to bring up the M1060s and the 1060C Opens because those are pretty good $300 planars. But I'm not really going to do that comparison because what I found is, as of right now, to shrink the technology into something the size of this, you basically have to deal with a set of compromises. And those compromises can run anything from heat on a computer component to durability of the components and the material used to, in this particular case, the sound quality. Because even compared to those other headphones, there's something that this particular headphone, and yes, I was cherry picking those other headphones versus one option of a particular type, so it may not be an apples to apples comparison. But what I found was that there's an overall scale and size to those headphones that cannot be attained by this particular headphone. Now, even though I said in the review that's one of the most impressive parts about it were the scale and were the size of the sound, that's compared to other $350 in-ear headphones that I have personally tried in the past. But when it competes to the bigger brother or the fuller size planar headphones, this doesn't really compete in terms of sound quality alone. But not everything about a product has to do with sound quality. Now, if you'll allow me for a second, I want to take a quick trip down to the land of what if. And I wanted to talk about what could potentially happen and what I think potentially could be the future of headphones. So this as a system right now, I do not think right here is the answer to the future of headphones, but I do think something a little bit of a hybrid to this could actually be a viable solution. So the idea for this was actually spawned by two headphones. One is going to be the iSign 10. These particular headphones kind of spawn the initial concept of the idea, and the other headphone is a $15 headphone, being the KSC 75s. Which I think you are all familiar with, and also notably, and we'll talk about that in a second, the Cost Porter Pros. Those are really budget-friendly options. I'll leave a link down below. They're like $15 and $25, I think. Super, super cheap, and they give a really great high-quality sound. So back to this, if I could design kind of the perfect, future headphone, what would it basically look like? And it would kind of honestly look something a little bit similar to this, except without this ear canal that it has here going in your ear. I think, for an in-ear, that's obviously necessary to be in your ear, but I think that the future of headphones would be without that, and let me explain. So if you cut this nozzle off and put something like a pad like those KSC 75s have, where they just have kind of a cloth piece that goes on your ear, and then they have the ear hook that kind of keeps it on your ear, but they don't have a headband, and it's a small portable size. I think something like that would be a viable solution, and I think that for a couple reasons. If you could, for example, change out the material used to build this. So this is a plastic design, but let's say you use something like titanium or aluminum, something that was a lot more robust than plastic, but also fairly lightweight. And you'd obviously have to find ear hooks that would fit your particular ear shape to be comfortable for you. So we've built this potential theoretical headphone, right? Lightweight, good build material, not something that's in ear, because that's the biggest drawback to this headphone for me, is the fact that it is in ear. I don't personally like things being in my ears that much, but there's actually a lot of other benefits to having something like that. One is going to be real obvious, and that's going to be the portability of it. This particular headphone, I'm scared to put in my pocket because the ear nozzle is made of plastic, and I feel like if I put too much pressure on it one way or the other, it would snap. But kind of, something that's just flat like this, I wouldn't have that same fear for it, and I could stick that in my pocket, no problem. And I think that portability is highly underestimated. And there's a couple reasons why. And one is that full-size open headphones make a lot of noise outside. They leak a lot, and they're very disturbing to neighbors. But something with a driver size this small is very, very quiet. At medium listening volumes, you could listen to this in an office without any potential for disrupting your neighbors at all, in my opinion. And you get the great benefits of having an open back sound. You can hear your coworkers, you can hear what's going on around you. Now, the other benefit is drivers this size do not require a ton of power to get going to reasonable levels of resolution and reasonable levels of volume. And I think that factor would be also a little bit underappreciated in the beginning. See, amplifiers have been kind of going in one of two directions, and there's a few in between that are going both directions. So those options right now are amplifiers with more power, just creating a ton of power, or amplifiers with really, really clean, like incredibly clean signals. So things like your JDS Labs Atom or your Liquid Spark are $100. They don't have the most amount of power, but even the JDS Labs Atom, which is the least powered of those two, at 1 watt at I think 32 ohms, but even that little bitty 1 watt is going to be more than enough for a driver of this size. So the benefits are highly portable, well built, and super, super easy to drive. Something that could be driven off of a phone, or similar to an Odyssey system where they take power from your phone and basically use an inline amplifier and have their own amplification and DAC system built into the line. That is one possibility as well. Now, the big question here is going to be the sound quality. Is something like this capable of sounding as good or better than a full-size open back headphone? And I'm going to step away a little bit from the what if world and step a little bit into the world of reality. Now, I do think it's possible for a couple of reasons. One, we have a precedent. So the precedent would be the KSC75. So the biggest issue that I was having with this headphone compared to those other full-size headphones is going to be the sound staging capability. While good for an in-ear, it was not great for a full-size headphone, whereas the KSC75s have great soundstage. Of any headphone, they have great soundstage. Not the best, but it's also a $15 headphone. Two is going to be the size of the driver relative to the distance from the ear. This is a factor that I think is very important for scale, and scale I consider to be separate from soundstage and imaging. Scale is kind of like the grandness of the sound. It's kind of the vastness of the sound. So as of right now, if I stick this in my ear, you can see that it's not actually, and this is just my ear, but it's not actually on or in my ear. It's not like directly pressed against the majority of my ear. So this driver is actually a little bit further away. And when it comes to, and I don't know, this looks funny, but when it comes to an ear perspective, if you imagine it kind of like a phone screen, if you push it further away, it looks smaller. And I think the same thing happens with sound. And that can also be beneficial towards soundstage, for example, like HD800s. That driver is actually really, really far away from your ear. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. And I think that really adds to the soundstaging capability of that headphone. Same thing goes with speakers. They're far away, and so they're able to soundstage a lot better and a lot more realistic than headphones are, for example. But when you bring that phone closer, all of a sudden your field of view gets taken up more, and the phone screen, as long as you can keep your focus on it, gets bigger and bigger and bigger and seems and appears bigger. And I think the same thing can happen with sound. So if I take this out of my ear and turn it around like this to where I'm hitting, let's imagine that this side is the side with the pad on it, and I press it right up against my ear, I think that's going to sound, one, more intimate, which is going to be beneficial for imaging and vocals and things like that. But the actual perspective size and scale is going to get wider and wider, and it's going to basically appear bigger. Now, when it comes to a vast perspective, this is really going to come down to the technology's ability to present that illusion. So there are things like a phone screen. Like, I can make my phone screen seem and take up as much space of my field of view as an IMAX theater, for example. But I never really feel like I'm watching an IMAX theater. And it's just because there's a sense of realism to an IMAX theater in terms of the scale that's a little bit more believable mentally than the phone. But our ears are a little bit more susceptible to trickery and illusion than our eyes are. So theoretically, I think this is certainly possible. And I think if manufacturers get on board with the concept of a small, portable, thin, and thin is going to be the key, thin, well-built package that sounds good. Similar to a lot of other technologies, I think if you force innovation, force them to get smaller, force them to get more precise, there's a lot of beneficial things that can happen. Now, I guess as an overall disclaimer, in case it wasn't clear, I'm not saying that in-ear headphones and over-ear headphones are just going to be obliterated and they won't exist ever again. I'm not saying that at all. There will always be people who prefer in-ears versus over-ears, or people who prefer that small portable package, or people who prefer the size of a full-size headphone. Those people will always exist. And legitimately, the audiophile industry is super stubborn. So even if they did sound as good, I still think we'd have the elitists who love the original over-ear headphones and claim that they sound better for some weird factors that, whatever. But we'll deal with that as it comes. But I think something like that theoretical headphone could be a great compromise on all fronts. Portable, easy to drive, and as long as you produce, good magnets and a good driver structure, if we're talking about a planar, for example, it could really produce an amazing result. It just comes down to whether or not companies will produce those items, and if they do, if people will adopt or deny them. All right, guys, I think that's going to wrap it up. I would really love your feedback on this topic, and let me know what you think the future of headphones is going to be. Is it just going to be kind of thinner and faster drivers? Or are we going to be seeing a surge of different types of form factors that offer different potential benefits? Please leave your comments down below. I'll leave links to things that I talked about down below. Those Amazon affiliate links do help the channel. So thank you for watching. My name's Josh, signing off.